welcome back to the PC Report. I'm here today with William Bunkley. Bill is the president of the Florida Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission here, the FERLC in the state of Florida, and Bill represents believers within the state, especially when it comes to legislation and the things and trends that can be a danger to us of faith here in our state. And so, Bill, welcome to the PC Report.
Pastor, good to be with you today, and greetings from the state capitol here in Tallahassee.
Thank you so much. Well, you're up there. Obviously, we're getting to the home stretch of the legislative session up there. And as our viewers don't know, you and I have been in close contact throughout the legislative session. We've been really following a number of bills, one in particular that I'd like to talk to you about today, the Pastor Protection Bill. There's similar bills, actually identical bills, one in the House and one in the Senate. The House bill, I believe, is House Bill 43. The Senate bill is 110. And if I could, let's just jump right on into it. There has been some activity about the bill in the House earlier today. And so why don't you go ahead and just talk about what the bill is supposed to do and what activity took place up there in the House today.
Yeah, sure. Well, let's bring things to a perspective. We got about 8 days left in this session. That's 8 business days, a week from Friday, as long as the legislators are able to bring the budget in for a landing on an agreement on both sides, we'll be concluding the session. Having said that, the Pastor Protection Bill, of course, we're a bicameral legislature. That means a bill must ride through the House as well as ride through the Senate. Right now, the Pastor Protection Bill mirrors the language. Well, let me just say this. Prior to today, the bill mirrored the language of the Pastor Protection Bill that was filed in Houston as a result of the activism of the Houston mayor against some of the pastors there, even going so far as to subpoena some of their sermons to see if they had preached on either homosexuality or even if they had defamed the reputation of the mayor. Fortunately, that got stopped in its tracks, and I must say the legislation we're talking about today went through both all of the legislative process there in Texas and became law without opposition. Not what we have here in Florida. Having said that, the bill has moved through all of its committees of reference in the House as well as all of its committees of reference in the Senate, and it is identical prior to today. Now, what happened today is that this bill is postured to be reviewed in both the House chamber and the Senate chamber. Well, today it got read for the second time. A bill has to go through 3 readings. They don't actually read it, but when it actually gets up here in the House, it's reading number 1. Today, it was debated on second reading, and then they also considered amendments. So today, what happened is that this was the floor introduction of the bill. Senator Scott Plakin is the sponsor of the House bill. Senator Aaron Bean is the sponsor of the Senate bill. Aaron is from Jacksonville, Florida. Scott is from Longwood, over in Orlando area. And so today, there was a few amendments that were filed on the system, but essentially what happened today, more of a friendly, and that would be Representative Gonzalez, who's a Republican from Venice, offered an amendment to further categorize the type of institutions or the type of applications that the Pastor Protection Bill, in terms of protecting the pastor with First Amendment rights about marriage, et cetera, et cetera. I personally opposed the amendment because I'm very leery about putting in statutes any lists, because either you leave a list out or something can be misinterpreted. Of course, there's 2 different schools of thought. Plus, the other amendments, quite frankly, were originated with a group called Equality Florida. Now, Equality Florida is the LGBT, which is the gay rights advocates. They have come on strong here, Pastor, in the last couple of years. What I mean by that, we believe there's about 25 different advocates now advocating for all sorts of protections or special rights, as you will, for homosexuals, and give you an idea that probably outnumbers us 4 or 5 to 1 of our team that's up here, and some of my colleagues that are here on both pro-family and pro-life legislation. But having said that, over particularly on this really originated more on the Senate side. We have another senator who's kind of in this mix here, and that is Senator Simmons. He's also from over in the Longwood area. He's a corporate attorney, and they being the LGBT advocates, they are very worthy adversaries. I want to say they're very sharp, very good at what they do, and obviously we can see that in other examples all the way up to the recent Supreme Court decision, and in such a very small period of time they have made a lot of progress that is something that's certainly contrary to our worldview, but one has to acknowledge the fact that these folks know what they're doing. And we need to be stepping up our game to be, quite frankly, going toe-to-toe. Having said that, they, with Senator Simmons, they have put together some amendments that actually would do the polar opposite of what the bill is supposed to do, and that is to protect pastors. Really clever language that could really open it up. So what happened today, the one so-called friendly amendment got on in the House, and but we're going to be watching what happens in the Senate. And again, I must also say that I have not, for those that may be following our weekly updates with the Florida Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, you will probably know that I have been neither a supporter or an opponent to the bill. What I have been a big advocate for is I thought, in fact, I'll be candid with those watching today. I asked the bill sponsor in the House not to run this bill. And I was joined by a couple of colleagues, particularly because last year we were working very hard on language to protect entities that do social services here in the state of Florida as part of the privatization we've been doing for 10 or 15 years. And we passed that bill in the House but could not get it passed in the Senate. So we have that issue that I believe is a burning issue right now, but we also have, by examples around the country, those small Christian-based businesses who are in the service industry for, well, ceremonies, like a marriage ceremony. We have Christian bakers, Christian photographers, Christian wedding chapel owners, and the idea is that their First Amendment protections, I believe, have been violated in other venues, and fines in excess or six-figure fines have been imposed. So my position is, Pastor, is that the work that this legislature should have been doing was not protecting the pastors. Not that you, the pastors that are listening today, are not one day going to be in the crosshairs. You will, no doubt about that. It's just not today. And so when this bill was filed, it really sort of dampened all the effects to get any other bill filed as well. And so I've wanted to amend this bill like they just did in Georgia, identical situation, but neither sponsor had the will or the motivation to fight that fight and to expand their bill. So this is where we're at today.
Now, I noticed that in conversations that they were having on the floor that actually there were some folks asking the bill author if this was just the first step, the Trojan horse, so to speak, and did he anticipate that in future days and in future bills, maybe in other sessions, that there would be a natural second step. And I think that's kind of what you had hoped would have been the first step, it would have not only covered this very specific narrow part of a religious church body and those that are employed and work through a religious body, but also to the Christians in those kind of venues.
Well, not to get in the weeds, but this is what's called an excellent vehicle. And what I mean by that is you have certain areas of germanity in terms of a single subject. And so here we are talking about protections, conscience clause protections for pastors. So it would have been very easily, in fact, that's just what happened in the Georgia legislature. It started out as pastor protection, but they well knew, as we really know here, even though some have chosen not to do the more bold approach to really address the issues we have today. It's an excellent vehicle, and in fact, in every committee meeting I have watched the adversaries on the other side. They know full well this was a beautiful bill
Yeah.
to put the other protections on. They kept looking for it. And the fact, I think, part of what you see today is they're still wondering, why haven't you dropped the other shoe? I mean, why haven't you guys moved forward? And so I believe, I may be the lone voice, but I've been sort of a Jeremiah before. I will tell you that we have missed a golden opportunity. And by the way, if we part of the issue was, well, if you do that, you're going to kill the bill. And I came back and I said, okay, if pastors aren't in the crosshairs today, and one of the things I think is very important about what this bill is going to do is the publicity and getting the word out. So what happened? So what's the big deal if pastor protection didn't pass this year? Our pastors are not in jeopardy this year, but if we further the educational piece and we at least prayed and strategized and moved forward with at least an attempt to broaden this to protect the various areas that we know are in jeopardy today, all right, well, sometimes you come up short. But I was not, I guess, very convincing in my argument because that is not what they chose to do.
I see. So what actually happened today is that there were four amendments to the House bill that were debated and were voted on. Two of those were withdrawn by the author of those two amendments. Two of them were agreed to. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So now what happens next? Now that the amendments have been dealt with, where does the House go with this particular legislation?
Well, that concluded second reading. Now, what will happen is it has to come before the House again on third reading, which, if it is successfully debated, there's always an opportunity for amendments on third reading, and then there's a final vote. It could be amended, it could be postponed, but basically, what will happen is this bill will go to third reading. Now, remember that in the Senate, they haven't heard their bill yet. So, what happens is, depending on coordination on this, I believe that since House Representative Plakin was the real individual that was out front on this, and he sought Senator Bean to file the companion legislation,
Okay.
it wouldn't be surprising to me to either way for the House bill. What will happen is when you have two bills like this, the Senate's going to decide on their amendments. So we have a whole another day of observation to see what they're going to do, and
And
then
if I can
obviously,
interject, that should take place. I believe that's scheduled for tomorrow in the Senate. Isn't that right?
well, it's scheduled tomorrow, but I know that Senator Bean was telling some advocates it might not be until next week. So
That would be the
maybe,
very last week of session.
well, yeah, but you got to understand that you have the published list that you and I see on the calendar,
Yeah.
and then you have what we call the pocket list.
Ah,
And the pocket list is what they want to get done, they'll get done.
I see.
Whether this or other pieces of legislation, whatever's on the list or not on the list, I don't really know. But I will tell you that if they want this legislation or any other legislation, it will get done. And legislation that leadership doesn't want to get done for one reason or the other won't get done. And remember that another thing that happens right now is the posturing between the two chambers. The Senate President, Andy Gardner, he has some things that he wants on behalf of his 40 senators. And House Speaker Chris Foley, on behalf of his 120 members, mostly Republicans, I might add, is what he's worried about. Same thing in the Senate. So they'll have these two different priorities. What happens from here on out is, if the Senate right now the House knows what the Senate wants, and the Senate knows what the House wants. So it's a game of cat and mouse, tit for tat. So we'll see one item moved up that the Senate may take up that the House wants, and then the House will do one of theirs. And this is how we play the game until now, the end of session. So this bill will figure into that. And I will say this. I'm concerned about the language that got on today, even the friendly amendment. I'm concerned that we might be better off not doing anything
Mhm.
and having the bill die than to have that language on there. So there's a lot that can happen, and again, we still have these. The Senate is a much more moderate to liberal chamber, even with Republicans. And so we could see some of the language that didn't get on here absolutely get on over in the Senate. And I think most of these amendments are poison pills if they get on the bill. So we'll just have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that just for a moment, Bill, as we kind of get through this session here. Um, I've read today all four of the amendments that are on the Senate side that have yet to be deliberated over, and two of them, both of them proffered by Senator Clemens from down in the Palm Beach area. Um, those are actually what I read as a pastor and as an untrained eye, actually not pastor protection at all. They're actually pastor not protect. They're pastor targeting bills or amendments to the bill. What's your take on that, and can you describe to our audience real briefly what a couple of those amendments on the Senate side really truly do to this bill?
Well, let me just for today's purpose keep it kind of general, and that is what you're seeing in the amendments is really where the left and the secular humanists want to go with religious liberty in this country. I think that's the most basic thing. And when you get down to it, those amendments are designed to neuter, to just absolutely tie the hands of a pastor. And remember the law of the land in Canada right now. A pastor can't even preach against homosexuality. It's against federal law in Canada.
Wow.
And so this is a battle between civil rights and civil rights of gays, bisexuals, and transgenders, as opposed to religious liberty. Dr. Albert Mohler calls it, erotic liberty rights versus religious liberty rights. And even though erotic liberty rights are not notated in the Constitution, they are being argued every day. And so there's a statement being made by Senator Clements. I doubt whether those amendments would get on the bill, but keep in mind that when Senator Clements gets to get up, I can tell you with the 25 lobbyists that are here, they're in the chamber watching. They were there for the House. They'll be over in the Senate. A lot of them will be watching statewide on the internet, which you can do. And so Senator Clements is going to be one of those who's going to stand up, and because of what he's going to fight for, even if he fails, he's going to become more of the hero for that side, for advocating for their rights. And so remember that, I guess the best example is, ever since Roe versus Wade, we could have just rolled over and let the decision be the decision. We are still working incrementally. Last year, we passed a 24-hour waiting pause here. It was enjoined by the courts. It was let go for a couple of days. Now it's going to be appealed to the Supreme Court. This year, we're working on clinic regs and doctor regs in forms of tightening up for abortion clinics. So every year, things are incremental. Sometimes we take 4 or 5 years. That's one reason why I want to circle back. I was so disappointed. In the first year, we got the protection for the children's home passed out of the House. And instead of coming back and working on it again, it was abandoned this year. And to have the folks on our team not even want to take a shot at addressing the issues of the day, that's where we're at. So I would say those amendments, what they'll do is they would basically really put a pastor and others in the crosshairs. And it is the entanglement of free speech. And you're not going to be able to preach to convictions. You're not even going to be able to create. You wouldn't even be able to down the road quote Romans. You can't quote Romans in public in Canada right now. So that's the gist of what those amendments would do. And again, the South Florida contingent and their representatives, even Republicans, are much different than many other aspects of who Florida is around the state. And that's just the reality we deal with now.
Now, Bill, if you could, as we kind of wrap up our time together, Could you just kind of give us, our audience, a call to action? What can the folks that are watching our broadcast here today do that would help enhance the ability for this bill to go through? Can you give us any idea there?
Well, each and every one of you could look on your voter registration card, and it will give you your Senate district and your House district. Now, remember, we're talking about the Florida House and the Florida Senate. We're not talking about Congress. We're not talking about your two U.S. senators, nor your congressmen. We're talking about the Florida House. On this or any bill, you can simply then look up that district number. You can go to My Florida House or the Florida Senate. Just Google either one of them, and you can look up your two representatives. On these and other issues, I pretty much nowadays recommend calling if you can. The reason is that emails come in, they get filed away. If it's a big issue, they may count the number of emails for or against, but having an opportunity to talk to the office is important. And I would say that if you really want to get involved, you'll want to go by, not now, but when the session's over, you'll want to go by and visit your Senate office in your home district and your representative office and get to know the legislative assistants. You might not get a lot of quality time with the representative or the senator, but build that relationship so that when they call, they know who you are. And if I could just take a moment, I've been advocating for 20, 30 years. Pastors, you should be visiting your state senator twice a year. You should be visiting your state representative twice a year. They should know you on a first-hand basis. You don't know the number of times where I speak and I just sort of craftily inquire about the relationship with a particular pastor, and oftentimes they don't know who they are, and they've never met with them. And so when they don't vote our way, well, understand that if the folks back home aren't paying attention, they're going to pay attention to who's paying attention. So I say the same thing for the lay people to answer your question that way. Get to know your representatives. Let them know you're praying for them, and get your churches to get action committees together. There's nothing wrong with following the issues. I don't recommend endorsing candidates, but you can certainly do voter guides and do voter education. We're in this mess today. It's not because of the liberals. It's not because of secular humanists. It's not because of the atheists. It's not because of the gays. We're in the mess we're in today is because we've been so blessed. We've taken our eye off the ball. We lived in a country where we had the opportunity to be involved with a representative form of government, and because we've been asleep, we've lost the Christian heritage of this nation. I don't believe we're a Christian nation anymore. We have a strong Christian remnant, but absence of revival or one last great awakening, we're in trouble. And the only way we're going to get out of trouble is first praying, asking God to forgive us, and then impacting our community one by one. And if we keep doing what we've been doing the last 2 or 3 decades, Pastor, how can we expect to have any different results than what we're seeing right here today in Tallahassee?
Well, Bill, I can't tell you how much I appreciate on behalf of our viewers your time and your thoughtfulness and your work that you're doing. Could you, as we kind of close off here, could you just kind of let our audience know how they can be following you and the work that you're doing there?
Well, I would suggest that we got 1 week left, but we'll be doing updates, and we are trying to staff up. We're in a little bit of a fundraising crunch, but we need to update our website. But I want to tell you very simply, go to floridareligiousliberty.com. That's floridareligiousliberty.com. A couple of things there. You can go there and sign up for our newsletters. And so you'll be able to be on that list. And of course, also, if you'd like to pray about supporting us and being one of our financial partners, you can do that there as well. But FloridaReligiousLiberty.com makes it very simple. It is the official website of the Florida Ethics and Religious Liberties Commission here in Tallahassee. I happen to live in Tampa. We're based in Tampa, but we commute back and forth with the legislators. And I want to tell you that part of our mission is we were underwritten for many, many years by the Florida Baptist State Convention, and things have been sort of reorganized. We do have some support there, but it's up to us to raise the significant amount for our work. and that's what we're learning to do. So your prayers would be greatly appreciated, and then the rest as the Lord sees fit to lead you in that as well. But again, that website is floridaredstory.com. I invite you to join up and be part of our email list, and we'll keep you informed.
Well, and of course, we want to tell our viewers, of course, as well, that as a positively Christian, certainly could use your assistance both in prayer and financial as well. And we'd love to have you subscribe so you can continue to get great information about issues that are facing you as a believer in Christ, both in your local community as well as across the state, and in some cases across the nation. And so you can click on the big red subscribe button. It will provide you with notifications about interviews like I'm having today with Bill, as well as other religious and political leaders. And I also want to let you know that if you'd like to donate to our cause, there's a green Donate Now button on the screen. Please feel free to use that, and we appreciate all the help. God bless you all. Thank you so much for attending. And once again, Bill, thanks so much for being here as part of our guest on DC Reports.
God bless you. Thank you for your ministry.
Thank you so much. God bless you. Have a great